I never thought my wedding day would end in tears, but not for the reasons most brides cry. I'm Sarah Mitchell, and this is the story of how a DNA test didn't just prove my baby's paternity. It exposed a decades-old family secret that changed everything. Growing up in a middle-class family, I learned the value of hard work early. My parents, Tom and Linda Mitchell, ran a small bookstore that barely kept us afloat. But what we lacked in money, we made up for in love and support. I worked my way through college, taking evening shifts at a local cafe while studying business administration. That's where I met James Armstrong. He came in every evening, ordered the same black coffee, and sat in a corner, working on his laptop. Unlike the other wealthy customers who treated us like we were invisible, James always smiled, said please and thank you, and left generous tips. I didn't know he was the heir to Armstrong Industries, one of the largest tech companies in the country. To me, he was just James, the kind customer who enjoyed discussing books and sharing jokes during quiet moments at the cafe. You're different from other people I meet, he told me one evening. You see me, not my bank account. I laughed, still unaware of his wealth. Well, your bank account isn't the one having conversations with me. Our love story wasn't dramatic or complicated. We simply fell in love, naturally and deeply. James later told me he loved how I treated him like a normal person, not an ATM machine with legs. Everything was perfect until I met his family. The Armstrong mansion felt like walking into another world. Victoria Armstrong, James's mother, took one look at my simple dress and pursed her lips. His sister Catherine's smile never reached her eyes. So what does your family do? Victoria asked during dinner, her voice dripping with judgment. They own a bookstore, I replied proudly. How quaint, Catherine smirked. Mother, remember when James dated that neurosurgeon last year? The passive-aggressive comments continued throughout dinner. James squeezed my hand under the table, silently apologizing for his family's behavior. Despite their disapproval, James proposed. 6 months later, the ring was simple by Armstrong standards, chosen because it reminded him of starlight, something we often watched together on the cafe's roof. After closing time, I don't care what they think, James said when I expressed concern about his family's reaction. I love you, and that's all that matters. The wedding planning was a nightmare. Victoria insisted on taking over, turning our simple ceremony into a society event. Every decision I made was questioned, every choice criticized. Darling, Victoria would say, her voice sweet but her words sharp, let's be realistic. You're not exactly experienced with our kind of events. Then, 2 months before the wedding, I discovered I was pregnant. James was overjoyed, but his family's reaction was immediate and cruel. How convenient, Catherine sneered. Trapped him just in time, didn't you? James defended me fiercely, but the damage was done. Whispers circulated through their social circle about the gold digger who got pregnant to secure her position. The wedding day arrived, and despite everything, I was determined to be happy. James looked handsome in his tuxedo, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. Then came the reception. Victoria stood up to make her speech, glass in hand. Her words started sweet, but quickly turned venomous. When James told us about Sarah, we were surprised. It's not every day that a cafe waitress catches the eye of an Armstrong. But love is blind, they say. Sometimes, too blind. The room grew uncomfortably quiet, and now, with a baby on the way, how fortunate for Sarah. Though some might question the timing. James started to stand, but Catherine beaconed to it. Let's settle this once and for all. If you're so confident the baby is James's, you won't mind a DNA test, will you? The room erupted in gasps and whispers. James was livid, but I felt an odd sense of calm. Rising slowly, I looked Victoria and Catherine in the eyes. Actually, I insist on it. Let's do it, right now. My confidence seemed to unsettle them. Victoria's champagne glass trembled slightly. Now, Catherine stammered. Yes, now. In fact, I took the liberty of having a testing facility on standby. I had a feeling something like this might happen. James looked at me with pride and concern. Sarah, you don't have to prove anything to them. Yes, I do. Not for them, but for our child. I want everyone to know the truth. The next hour was a blur. The testing facility representative arrived, samples were taken, and we waited. Victoria and Catherine sat together, whispering and shooting me triumphant looks. Finally, the results were ready. The representative opened the envelope, and what happened next would change the Armstrong family forever. The representative's hands shook slightly as she read the results. The room fell into a deafening silence. According to these results, she began, her voice clear and professional. There's something unexpected. Victoria's triumphant smile started to spread, but the next words froze it in place. The DNA test confirms that Mr. James Armstrong is indeed the father. However, there's another match in our database. My heart stopped. James gripped my hand tighter. Mrs. Victoria Armstrong, your DNA markers indicate that you are not Mr. Armstrong's biological mother. The champagne glass slipped from Victoria's hand, shattering on the marble floor. The sound echoed through the silent room. That's impossible, Catherine shrieked. Run it again. We ran it 3 times to confirm, the representative replied calmly. The results are conclusive. Suddenly, an elderly man stood up from the corner of the room. It was George Armstrong, James' 85-year-old grandfather. His voice, though shaky with age, carried authority. I knew this day would come, he said, walking slowly toward us. Victoria, it's time for the truth. Victoria's face had turned ash white. Father, please. No more lies, George declared. James, my boy, your real mother was Diana Reynolds, your father's first love. Victoria was his second wife. The revelations kept coming. Through George's story, we learned that James's father, Richard Armstrong, had been engaged to Diana Reynolds, his college sweetheart. They had married in secret because the Armstrong family disapproved of her modest background. Diana died in childbirth, George continued, his voice heavy with regret. Richard was devastated. Victoria was our family's accountant at the time. She knew about the secret marriage and threatened to expose it, unless Richard married her. We were worried about a scandal affecting the company's stock prices. James stood frozen, processing the truth about his origins. So all these years, all the times you criticized Sarah for her background, you were doing exactly what you accused me of. I finished, looking directly at Victoria. You used your position to force your way into this family. Victoria's carefully maintained facade crumbled. You don't understand. I loved Richard. I deserved to be an Armstrong. No, Mother, Catherine interrupted, tears in her eyes. You taught me to look down on people like Sarah, to judge them for their background. But you were just projecting your own guilt. The wedding reception descended into chaos. Guests whispered and pointed as Victoria fled the room, Catherine following close behind. But amid the drama, something beautiful happened. George Armstrong took my hands in his weathered ones. My dear, he said, his eyes twinkling, you remind me so much of Diana. The same spirit, the same genuine heart. Welcome to the family, truly. James was quiet during the drive home that night. When we finally got to our apartment, he broke down. I always felt something was missing, he confessed. The way Victoria treated me, it never felt like real maternal love. Now I know why. I held him as he grieved for the mother he never knew and the lies he'd been told. Diana would be proud of you, I whispered. You have her heart. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Victoria resigned from her position at Armstrong Industries and disappeared to Europe. Catherine, struggling with her own identity crisis, checked herself into therapy. George became a constant presence in our lives, sharing stories about Diana and showing us old photographs he kept hidden away. In them, I saw James's smile, his kind eyes. Diana was a waitress too, you know. George told me one afternoon as we looked through the albums. That's how she met Richard. Love doesn't care about bank accounts. But the story wasn't over. One morning, about a month after the wedding, a letter arrived. The return address was from a law firm I didn't recognize. The letter sat unopened on our kitchen counter for hours. James stared at it, his coffee growing cold. It's from Diana's family lawyer, he finally said. Grandfather told me they might contact us. With trembling hands, we opened it together. As we read, our eyes widened. Diana Reynolds hadn't just been a waitress. She'd been an heiress who gave up her fortune to marry for love. Your mother, the letter explained, came from old money, but her family disowned her for marrying your father. Before her death, she created a trust in your name. It was to be revealed only when the truth about your birth came to light. The trust wasn't just money. Diana had left extensive diaries, letters, and photographs. Through her words, we finally met the woman who given James life. My dearest baby, one letter read, "If you're reading this, I'm no longer there. But know that every breath I took was filled with love for you. I pray you'll find someone who loves you for who you are, not what you own." As I watched James read his mother's words, my hand resting on my growing belly, I felt Diana's presence. She faced the same judgment I had, the same accusations of fortune hunting. Ironically, Diana's inheritance made her wealthier than the Armstrongs. The trust had grown substantially over the years, now worth billions. Victoria's worst fear had come true. The gold digger she replaced had been richer than her all along. But money wasn't what healed our family. It was truth. George moved in with us, his health failing but his spirit strong. He spent hours telling stories about Diana and Richard's love story, helping James connect with his real heritage. Catherine showed up one day, tears streaming down her face. "I've been seeing a therapist," she said. "I realized I became exactly what Mother trained me to be, judgmental, materialistic. Can we start over?" Over time, she became the sister I never had. When our daughter was born, we named her Diana. Catherine was her godmother. Victoria tried to reconcile once news of Diana's fortune became public. She showed up at our door, all apologies and excuses. "I've changed," she claimed. "I understand now what really matters." James listened politely but firmly showed her out. "The money didn't change who Sarah was," he said, "and it hasn't changed who you are either." As I write this, baby Diana is sleeping in her crib. She has her grandmother's eyes. Not Victoria's cold gray, but Diana's warm brown, full of life and love. On her wall hangs a photo of Deanna Reynolds smiling in her waitress uniform, her whole life ahead of her. George passes away peacefully a year later, happy to have seen his great-granddaughter and to have finally shared the truth. In his will, he left us one last gift, Diana's wedding ring, which he kept safe all these years. Sometimes life's greatest riches aren't found in bank accounts or trust funds. They're found in the truth, in genuine love, in the courage to stand up for what's right. Victoria thought she was exposing me as a fraud at my wedding, but instead she exposed herself. Catherine now runs a non-profit helping underprivileged students achieve their dreams. Aunt Catherine is Diana's favorite person, after her parents, of course. She's proof that people can change when they face their truth. As for Victoria, we hear she's remarried in Europe. I hope she's found whatever she was looking for when she schemed her way into the Armstrong family all those years ago. James and I still visit that cafe where we first met. Sometimes we bring little Diana, who loves to sit in the same corner where her father used to work. The other day, she looked up at us and asked, "Did Grandma Diana work here too?" "No, sweetheart," James answered, smiling at me. "But she worked somewhere just like it. And like your mom, she knew that love is worth more than all the money in the world." We've kept our jobs. James still runs Armstrong Industries, and I've turned my parents' struggling bookstore into a successful chain. But we never forgot where we came from or what really matters. The DNA test that was meant to shame me ended up revealing a greater truth, that authenticity and love will always triumph over lies and manipulation. And sometimes, like in my case, they come with an unexpected bonus. A mother-in-law in heaven who would have welcomed me with open arms. They say the truth sets you free. For our family, it did more than that. It gave us a second chance at real love, genuine connections, and a legacy worth more than any inheritance. As I watch my daughter grow, I'm reminded of something Diana wrote in her final letter. True wealth isn't in what you own, but in who you choose to be. Those words guide us every day as we build our own family story, one based on love, truth, and the courage to stand up for both.